Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the Heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John will be with us here in just a minute. We are going to start out talking a little bit about the NCAA basketball tournament. John and I talked about this last week, and we were curious as to if there would be an impact on Gonzaga since they had to actually play a competitive game against UCLA, and then Baylor pretty much ran over Houston. And I've seen a lot of narratives based on the fact that Baylor looked more fresh than Gonzaga in that game. But I'm not sure that had a whole lot to do with it. I mean, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But the bottom line was, in my opinion, well, first of all, Baylor was knocking the lights out from downtown early in the game, got the early lead, and in a lot of ways, it was like watching the Bowling Green Greenwood boys basketball regional final, and where once the better team got the lead, the other team just could not really chip into that lead. They couldn't do much about it. Gonzaga got within 10, I think it was, at halftime, and then Baylor opened the second half on a run and just nailed it down from there. But really the bottom line was, to me, Baylor just played defense extremely well against the Zags offense. And I just don't know that they had run into a team that played defense that well. If you look at their win over UCLA did not slow down Gonzaga's offense. UCLA just had the ability to score points and kind of keep pace. Baylor had the ability to score points, but more importantly, they had the ability to really just shut down Gonzaga's offense, really limit what they were trying to do. I mean, they basically took away the inside game. They absolutely dominated Gonzaga on the boards, especially early in the game. And I had a friend who was on Twitter who made a comment about he was about to turn that game off and go ahead and decide he's trying to decide whether or not he's going to get sleep or turn the game off. And I told him, well, they're getting killed on the boards and they can't score, so you might want to go ahead and catch that sleep. He said he was giving them about 5 more minutes. I'm not sure if he gave them 5 more minutes or not. They didn't need 5 more minutes. They only needed 1 more, and he probably was hanging it up after that. So, John, I was just discussing the fact that national championship game just turned out to be a pretty much one-sided affair. Baylor looked like the biggest thing to me was Baylor was just better defensively. They defended everything Gonzaga wanted to do, and the Zags just never could solve that particular riddle.
And Gonzaga plays 10 times. I think Baylor wins 7, 8 out of 10. They just look more athletic.
Yeah.
They just got after Gonzaga, and I don't think it helped Gonzaga to play UCLA on the overtime game on Saturday.
Right.
And that game probably didn't get over with to about 11 o'clock, 11:30. Mm-hmm. Who knows when they went to bed after you ate and all that other stuff.
Right.
I don't think Gonzaga was flat. I think they were. I think they were emotionally just kind of got hit with a haymaker early, and they never recovered. The game really wasn't close.
Yeah, I mean, the closest they got was the 10 at halftime.
Yeah, and that was it. And it looked like, and probably the only thing that kept Baylor from being undefeated all year was COVID. They missed 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think it's easy for people to forget that. And you did point this out last week. They had 2 losses, but those 2 losses were around, I mean, they were rolling, and then they had the COVID issue, missed some time, and the 2 losses came within that confine of those couple of weeks where they had been out. Maybe they had a player out during that time. I don't remember exactly how it panned out, but those 2 losses they had were within that time frame. Otherwise, they were as perfect as Gonzaga in so many ways. I think the other thing was, I don't know that Gonzaga played anybody all year who could defend them the way Baylor did.
Well, they hadn't had a game that, their conference eventually hurts them.
Yeah.
In terms of just those tight games and those tough games that Baylor has to play in their conference. They have to play the Kansases, the Texas Tech, Texas, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State.
Right.
And you learn to play those tough games. You play against better competition, and though Gonzaga was a heck of a team, they got to the finals.
Yeah.
I don't think they were ever tested, and just watching the 2 teams play, just to me, I know Baylor easily won that game, but it just looked like Baylor's a better team.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about that was even the UCLA game, UCLA didn't necessarily slow down Gonzaga's offense. They just were able to score against them.
Right.
And so that game wasn't about whether Gonzaga had to solve the riddle of somebody defending you. It was about basically just outscoring the other team in the end,
right?
Which they could do. I mean, that they could do. But man, I tell you that the moment of the game, I think it was 7-0, and I think Baylor had 4 or 5 offensive rebounds like in the first 2 minutes of the game. Like everything that they did miss, they got right back and put back up. And that was the part I was like, man, if they can't figure that out, this is going to be a long night.
Well, Baylor just was defensively just got after Gonzaga, and nobody in their conference can do that to them. I mean, BYU couldn't. I mean, Loyola Marymount. You name the teams in their conference that they played, and to be honest with you, nobody that they really faced in the NCAA tournament. They did not face. They kind of were fortunate. Mm-hmm. We said before, but we talked about this a couple weeks ago that I thought Gonzaga would make it this far because I thought they had a great draw.
Yeah. They really did.
And they were really never tested physically until they got to Baylor. And it's hard, it's hard to overcome that if you're not really used to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I tell you another thing. We talked about Terrell Suggs, their freshman phenom there at Gonzaga. His second foul, I think the second foul was the charge call on him. Mm-hmm. And I think that was a moment, again, as you're mentioning, playing all these games through the course of the season, you don't run into somebody who's actually going to beat you to that spot when you're as quick as he is.
Right.
That dude was there all day. I'm sure there were people who didn't think it was a charge. But, I mean, he might as well have just set up a tent because he was waiting for Suggs to come to him for 2 or 3 steps. I mean, it wasn't even really a close call, I didn't think.
Yeah, and you add to all that stuff that you talked about, how good Gonzaga, Baylor was defensively. They're a great offensive team.
Yeah, I mean, they shot the lights out.
I mean, their three-point shooting all year has been as good, if not better, than most teams in the country. So they had the combination of defensively being at a high level and having great guards and shooters. And you got to give Coach Drew credit. 18 years ago the program was about completely disbanded. I mean, it was not a recruiting violation; it was a murder on their team.
Yeah, they've had a couple of instances in their program's history that you were like, are they going to maintain that basketball program?
Right.
Because it was a real disaster.
And he has come in and give him credit, too, because he has evolved as well.
Oh, yeah.
He was always known as a great recruiter, but not necessarily by the pundits as being a great game manager and whatever. And he was primarily a zone coach.
Yeah.
And he has adapted and changed a couple years ago to more primarily now man-to-man because it fits his personnel.
Yeah.
And he's also adapted to the changing of the game. I think 3 of their 5 starters were transfers.
Yeah.
And that's the name of the game right now.
It sure is.
It's not one and done. It's transfers.
Yeah, transfer and done.
That's right. That's right.
One of the things that I thought whenever they showed that Scott Drew was a coach at Baylor, I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember that he's there. But then the other thing that happened was he's been there 18 years. Is that what that number was? That was the part that really just caught me flat-footed. I did not realize he's the same person, going back to what you talked about.
I agree.
That basically reinvented that program and brought it back to life, and it's now, it's one of the better programs in the nation.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem 18 years. It does surprise me. I do get him confused with his brother.
Yeah, Bryce.
His brother is now at one of those Western schools. I forgot. Grand Canyon.
Yeah, that's right.
And his brother's at Grand Canyon. That's right. Yeah. And his brother, I think, was at Vanderbilt too, right?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, because, see, Bryce is the more famous brother because of the shot he made against Ole Miss.
That's right.
But Scott's the more famous coach, I would say, of the two of them because of what he's done there at Baylor.
Correct.
So I'm with you, though, because when they said Scott Drew for a minute there, I was like, like I said, it just didn't register for a second. And I'm like, he's been there 18 years. That's unbelievable. Real quick, let's also talk about the girls' state basketball tournament. We had talked about last week. We hoped it would be more interesting, more entertaining, I guess, than the boys' state tournament. It was. Games were competitive. Lots of good players were featured in the tournament.
Good controversy.
Controversy.
Yeah, I went up there Wednesday. I saw 2 games Wednesday. Yeah. I saw Anderson County play, and I saw the Franklin County and South Laurel game.
Yeah.
And I was surprised that Anderson County got beat.
I was too. I thought they were the team to beat.
I thought the two best teams were Bethlehem and Anderson County, and Sacred Heart kind of sneaks in there. Now, Sacred Heart, they're never a true underdog.
Yeah, they don't really sneak anywhere.
It's their fifth state title, and they've got a strong tradition of Sacred Heart. So they're never a major underdog. But this was not Coach Donna Moore's best team,
right?
And but they upset Anderson County in the semifinals, and that was to me a pretty good upset. And Bethlehem got taken out by Marshall County, which surprises me as well.
Yeah, I did not. I knew Marshall County was supposed to be good, but I'm with you. I did not have them pegged as the team to beat Bethlehem.
And that's rare in girls. It's normally Chalk City favorites.
Yeah,
and so it is a little bit uncommon, I would say, for. But again, it's hard to throw the underdog role on the Sacred Heart.
Yeah, they don't wear it well.
and they return everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, their
best player's a sophomore.
And, got juniors and played 3 freshmen a lot. And, so they're always prepared. What's hurt her in the past is they've had some pretty big injuries at the end of the years that, they've mainly devastating knee injuries that have knocked out some of their better players. But this time they made it through and won a lot of close, tough games. The year that they won two state titles back in 04 and 05 when I was coaching, and then they beat us in the quarterfinals in 2004. That's when I had Patricia Barlow. But they had on that team 2 missed basketballs back to back. Crystal Kelly and Carly Amarud, who went to UK, and Crystal Kelly went to Western. They had another Division I player. They were dominant back then. This team not quite as dominant.
This team was sort of, I think it was either maybe it was 07 or 08 when they made it to the finals. I don't think they won it, but it was a team that was like this one that she has now. It was a bunch of young players, and they weren't expected to be there.
She's a good coach. She's a very good coach. They got a great program, and but I was a little surprised. A lot of controversy up there. There's some play was quite physical, and a lot of there was a no call in the finals with Marshall County that's pretty controversial, and the Franklin County South Laurel game was incredibly physical, and a lot of no calls that were made. So you had that normal kind of stir and things like that. But I'm glad to go up there and watch it. It's the attendance was I think the biggest attendance for the guys was 4,200 maybe. I think 4,600 is all they was going to let in.
Yeah.
I think the girls may have got to 2,000. But the KSOSA kind of made up some of that law. There's no way they could, the best they could probably do is break maybe make a little bit. It's hard to when you're restricting it that much. But instead of buying one ticket get you 2 games, you had to buy a ticket for every game. So they try to recoup some of their money. You had to leave the building and come back.
Which is a little between games, right?
Well, no, there's probably nothing.
You don't have
more
to answer that question.
No, that's totally false. But that's what they claimed. They may have claimed the benches. When I came back in for the second game, the cups and everything was still left in the places that they were on, in our row and so forth. But they, I guess.
It was like one of those apocalyptic scenes from a deserted city. You came back in and everything was exactly as it had been. It
was, and I don't. That cannot last because the people that want to come, that are going to pay for the whole tournament, season ticket holders, they do not want to leave and come back in. That does, and it's not like you just walk out and walk back in. You had to walk out and stay out for 15, 20 minutes. That cannot go over very well.
That cannot be a lesson carried forward outside
not.
Of this year. That is an exception. It can't be a new way of going about it. I don't think.
No,
it won't last because people won't do that. I don't think.
I don't think so either.
And in the end, I think that would actually end up costing them more money down the road.
Right.
Going back to the controversy there at the end, real quick, end of the Sacred Heart Marshall County game. Now, I'm sure you've seen the video of it and this kind of stuff. And I can see if you are a Marshall County fan, you might be upset. But I watched that thing, I don't know, 3 or 4 different ways that people had posted it. And to me, it looked like a lot of what the action I saw during the course of the season, where there was a lot of contact in circumstances that there weren't fouls called. And now I don't know how all that works out. Some official would have to tell us. But it kind of looked to me that it worked out the way it was going to work out. No, there may have been a couple of exceptions, one being the Glasgow Franklin Simpson regional tournament game down at Franklin Simpson. I think Craig Pippen would say, no, that went against us.
Right. Well, that was a call.
Yeah.
These were no calls.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Is
Yep.
A lot of times those are no calls in those situations, I think.
Right. But this was a pretty blatant, in football, when the ball is in the air, it's, the defensive player does have a right to the ball.
Yeah.
I think in basketball it's a little bit different. Generally, when you throw it to a player, the defensive player generally can't dislodge you. I think the question would be, did the defensive player get there first or whatever? I mean, it was a big-time collision that was not called. I'm not saying it was right or wrong, but I think what irritated the Marshall County people is that about a minute earlier there was a foul call that was overruled by a jump ball call that went against them as well.
Well, I can see.
So it just kind of adds up. But
they already had one in their pocket. They were a little bit stewing about it.
Yeah. So these are emotional times and things like that, and it's most generally the group that loses sometimes has the most to complain about.
Yeah, sometimes rightfully so, and sometimes not.
Rightly, sometimes wrongly. That's exactly right.
Real quick, I wanted to bring this up as we wrap up this section and kind of put the basketball season to bed for us. The extra year eligibility, whatever we want to call it, that was passed, and signed into law by the governor. It's considered an emergency law because it has to be enacted within a certain time frame. Usually these things wouldn't take effect until, I think, July 1, the start of the fiscal year. And so what happens here, though, is that if a player decides, if a student, we'll go that direction, if a student decides they want to have this extra year of eligibility where they can revisit what they may have lost academically because of the challenges of this school year under COVID.
Okay.
They have until May 1 to, file their intent with their local school board. All right. The local school board has until June 1 to make a decision, and that decision is a blanket decision. Either all the students who have an intent to return are allowed or none.
Well, I think the one thing that I was not aware of until this weekend reading it in the paper, I did not know there was a date that the students, I don't think that's been publicized very much. To be
well, and I went and double-checked the law just to make sure that I understood that
so
correctly.
If you want to get a free year, basically,
yeah.
you have to declare that by May 1st.
Yeah, you have basically 3 weeks.
That has not, in fairness, been publicized very much at all. I think that's going to surprise some people.
Well, and if not for some people talking about it on Twitter, I would not have even noticed.
I think that's going to bite some people who may... And I'm not really for sure what the rationale for May 1st is. But anyway, they chose May 1st. But what's even stranger is you don't even know on May 1st if your school is going to allow it. The school has until June 1st.
I know. So that it is kind of interesting. But I guess the thing is, and this goes back to what I've talked about before.
And who do you apply to?
Well, you apply to your local school.
Well, what if you find out, what if you say, I want the year over, and then on June 1st your school says, we're not allowing anybody? Can you then transfer and get the year over?
Well, see, this is why I'm curious as to see how this breaks down after May 1.
Now, personally, I don't think you're going to see very, very few school districts are going to turn this down.
No, I'd say most of them are probably already signaling what their intent will be,
right?
Yes or no. And so the students probably have an idea, if they're paying attention, well, their parents more so than them, whether or not their district's going to allow it. This kind of goes back to me being curious about the transfer side of these things, because it says explicitly in the law, this does not override any KHSA eligibility restrictions, age,
I would love to represent a kid.
Well, see,
that was denied. So you're denied by one school the right to play. You're telling me you can't go to another one? I would take that case on.
Yeah. So I mean, this is it goes back to one of my biggest issues with this thing to start with, is that yes, the legislature passed the law and it's signed into law, but the can is really kicked to these school districts and administrators to deal with this.
They do this
a
lot.
Thing that they didn't create.
That's correct.
They do this a lot.
They're going to 95% of the school districts are going to allow it. I think you'll see less than 5% of the people take the year over.
Yeah.
There may be, maybe 5, maybe it could be 10%. it appears to be more of an athletic decision. I can actually see a younger graded student in the 4th, 5th, or 6th grade who's just had an awful year with being at home, who could actually perhaps benefit with another year.
Well, and they did extend it K to 12.
They did.
You know, to kind of deal with the people saying it's just an athletic.
Right.
Test.
I can see that, and I could actually live with that.
Yeah, I'm fine actually with the do-over on the academic side of things. I start having some issues when we start discussing, as we just were, the athletic side of this, because that does seem to put the cart before the horse, and there are going to be a whole lot of things that are going to be over there in the circuit court or whatever being dealt with that are not really.
Yeah, it's not going to be as clean as people think.
No, and some people who may want their children to do it might be surprised whenever, you know, somebody shows up at their school that fills the same position their kid did.
Yeah.
And they're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, who knows? This could be. I think it could be. I agree with you. I think it could be quite helpful in certain situations. I also, like anything else, it's going to cause some issues.
Yep. All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, you know, it's softball season.
Is it?
Yeah. You know, I mean,
Okay.
people played a week, and then they mostly took a week off. Some of them did. Actually,
Missed a great week to play.
man, it was beautiful. The week before was horrible, like miserable, cold. And last week was a beautiful week to play. There were some games played earlier in the week. I mean, we mentioned last week Glasgow's baseball team played on Monday. But Barron County's softball team, and we'll stick with softball for the minute, they closed the week with 4 good wins. They were supposed to have also played Saturday. They ended up getting rained out up at E-Town. But they beat
South Oldham,
Campbellsville. That was their closest game, 3-2. Beat DuPont Manual. Those 9-3. That was on Friday. The South Oldham was on Friday. And the other one was Bardstown. They beat 5-0.
Don't know. I can't remember.
I like at the top of my, maybe it was Bethlehem. They beat 5-0.
Maybe it was Bethlehem.
Yeah, so they played 4 games, looked good, hit the ball. I mean, they're still just hitting the ball so well.
I think I can confidently say that Barron County softball is good. I think they're legitimately definitely a regional contender, and I think you could probably make the argument there could be ranked in the top 25 legit, because they've got good pitching, and you know their hitting is probably as good as I've seen it in my 20-something years of following Barron County softball and coaching.
Yeah.
And they'll get tested this weekend because they go to a big tournament up in Scott County.
Yeah.
And they play my niece's team, actually. They play Lafayette, who's really good, too. And they play Lafayette and some other tems. And I think Lafayette's probably very similar to Barron, undefeated, and top 20, probably top 25, one of the better teams in the 11th. And there's quality teams up there. So Darryl has, Coach Murphy has scheduled like he wants to, unlike Gonzaga in a lot of ways, he's scheduled like he wants to test his team.
Yeah.
You don't want to get surprised at the end.
Yeah, his schedule is one of you may look up and say, well, their record is, 25-10. I mean, I'm not saying that's what it'll be, but, and you're like, well, I thought their record would be better than that. But when you look at their schedule, they may have lost 10 games to teams that are going to be playing in the state tournament or their regional contenders. And so their schedule is one that their record maybe surprise people at the end. But they may win a lot of these games, and we don't know. I'm just saying, if they're 25-10 and people are like, well, I thought they'd win 30 games this year. Well, it's because they played a schedule. They're going to lose some games, and it's kind of schedule. Coaches like yourself, Coach Murphy, probably don't mind losing some of those games as long as they're not games they just blew. It's against good competition that they learn from.
You have to, in basketball, especially in girls in our region right now, and in softball, you have to, if you want to be the best that you can be, you've got to seek out games.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to, you got to be willing in basketball to play those Christmas tournaments against the good teams, Lexington Catholic tournament, those shootouts that you need to go to play.
Yeah.
Schedule some regular season games on weekends if you can. In softball, you got to go to some of these big tournaments.
Yeah.
You just have to. If you just play local, you're not going to get challenged enough.
Right. Yeah,
but it needs to fit your type of team. And you know, if you're young and you're probably not a regional contender, then it may not do you a lot of good to do that. But if you got a team that you're pretty confident in that needs that challenge, you got to seek those games out.
Yeah, some teams are at the apex of what their talent can accomplish, and some teams are building toward it.
That's right.
And your schedule is often commensurate to where you are on that particular path. And speaking of which, I mean, Glasgow, they took the week off. Their last game was against, I think it was Monroe County in the All-A. That game did not go well for them. That was the Friday before. The night before that, they had beaten Hart County 4-1. And Barron's back in action today at Cumberland County. And in Glasgow today, they're at home against Franklin Simpson. So I'm sure Coach Crow's anxious to see which team he has at the moment, speaking of young teams, which team of his shows up. The one that won at Hart County scraped out a win, or the one that took it on the chin.
I don't know if today will be an indicator, because I don't know what teams did. If you didn't play during the spring break week, I don't think you probably practiced. Right. I mean, you may have got a couple of practices in, but most of the time, if you don't play during spring break, you're giving them time to.
Yeah, you went to Florida or something.
Or you got people doing that.
Yeah.
You may have practiced a couple of days on the back end of that.
Right.
So the best thing for Glasgow and a lot of these teams is they need to get games in. That's the only way to find out right now. You got to play. There's so much practice that you can do, but baseball, softball is a daily deal, and you need to play.
Well, and
they're going to have good weather this week too.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I mean, we had a week of spring sports, and then you had that spring break, and you come back. This is really the first, I'd say, full week of activity we're going to have of spring sports, in terms of getting a lot of games in. Weather's supposed to be good, and so teams can probably start. We can start seeing them define themselves. What kind of quality they really have.
I agree.
All right, it's the Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. When we come back, we're going to talk about a couple of wild baseball games.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, a couple of interesting baseball games happened, last week. The game Thursday, the Barron County Trojans played in. They played against Breckenridge County over at South Warren, and they had to. They ran what I referred to as a fire drill because it was rather fascinating in the extra innings. They got to the extra innings by basically getting a guy caught in a rundown.
Double steal.
Yeah, double steal.
Yeah.
And they end up. It's one of those where you do the double steal, and I guess really what you're hoping is you force the defense to make a mistake.
Yeah, I think you're talking about runners on first and third.
Yeah.
Yeah. You steal second and hope to draw the throw, and the runner on third goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Worked to tie the game, and then that ended up sending it to extra innings, and so it was 2-2 in the extra innings. The one that happened in the extra innings, though, I don't think was planned, John. They had a young guy that they put in the game, freshman I think he was, and so bases were loaded. There was one out, I believe, and so there was a pitch, and after talking to Coach Gillen, who coaches first base and that kind of thing, he thought maybe the guy thought the ball was in the dirt, so he took off to second. The only problem was the runners at second and third didn't move. So then he comes back and they throw the ball over to first base, and then Gillen yells out, "Get it caught in a rundown." And so then that's why I referred to it as a fire drill, because then it was all, everything's going everywhere. And they ended up scoring a couple of runs whenever the errant throw back to third.
So Breckenridge did not execute very well defensively.
No, I was surprised, and I think everybody else was surprised. But Corbin Murphy made it work to start with and got home, and then Jamison Bowie got home. And then eventually the young guy, Cash Moore, I think is his name, got to third base, and it worked out, and they ended up winning the game 6-3 in the eighth inning. But yeah, it was a very entertaining thing to watch.
Yeah, well, it's oftentimes when you can put people in motion in Little League and Babe Ruth and even high school, you can create havoc. And now the very good teams should be able to execute.
Yeah.
But at this time of year, in not playing last year, people are so far behind. I don't know, in fairness to a lot of high school teams, that you have been able to work on defensive execution and bunt coverage and things like that. So, in fairness to Breckenridge County, it was probably something that they may not have had a chance to work on, and they didn't execute very well.
Well, and I
don't think it was planned on Barron's part.
No,
now the double steal was planned, but
the original one was
it was planned. Most teams, a lot of teams in high school don't even make the throw to second when it's first and third, or they'll throw it to the shortstop or back to the pitcher, and trying to get that runner from third to bite.
Yeah,
you never see that in college and pros. You don't see that much. The arms are so strong, you can throw it to second, and that infielder can come and basically catch it and throw you back out at home.
Yeah.
But that's a hard play in high school.
Yeah, and like I said, the one in the extra inning was definitely not planned. That was improvised in the moment. So you got to give the coaches a lot of credit and the players a lot of credit to, actually pull it off.
Well, credit, and it was a mistake.
Yeah, discredit maybe to Breckenridge, but nonetheless.
Yeah, it was a mistake to run in first place, but they made it work, right?
Yeah, that's a lemonade from lemons is
there
what
you go.
that was.
There you go.
But then going back to what you were just talking about, how much teams have had to work on and that kind of stuff. Glasgow, meanwhile,
and Barron got 2 wins, right?
Yeah, they also beat Grant County 14-4. Just that wasn't so dramatic.
Barron
they just won the game.
I think Barron only has 1 loss.
Yeah,
4-1.
Yeah, their only losses to Glasgow.
To Glasgow, that's correct.
That one hurts them because that is a district.
Sure, it does, and that does hurt, but that's still overall good start.
Yeah. Meanwhile, then Glasgow, and we'll going back to what you just said. We missed a year. We don't know how much they've had a chance to work on. And that kind of thing. And I kind of felt like maybe that's what happened to Glasgow on Sunday. They ended up losing 9-6 to Clinton County, playing at Clinton County in the All-A regional tournament. They were up 6-0 that game. And
I didn't even know they had an All-A baseball.
They got All-A everything.
Okay. Okay, I didn't. For some reason, I wasn't even thinking. Okay.
Those guys have to have something to do, I suppose, on a Sunday afternoon.
All right.
But what happened in that game was the flip of what happened in the Barron County game. They were rolling right along. They were up 6-0. They gave up some runs. It was 6-3. All they really had to do was just get the outs and get out of the game. And they had been playing Metcalfe County later on Sunday night. It didn't work out. They ended up losing the game 9-6. And the bottom line was, it was kind of like Breckenridge. The mistakes they made are probably things that in most years would have been worked on, and they would have been able to clean up.
That's a little surprising because Clinton is not necessarily known as a baseball powerhouse, and Glasgow having a 6-0 lead, I'm sure it's disappointing for them to lose that.
Yeah,
because Glasgow's gotten off to a good start.
They have.
Their only loss was it to Danville?
Yeah, who was undefeated and mostly killed everybody they played.
So Glasgow's gotten off to a good start and so forth. So when I saw the loss to Clinton, that was surprising, and how they lost was surprising, to give up a 6-0 lead. But hey, that happens, and Clinton went on to win the All-A anyway, right? They beat Metcalfe in the finals 5-4.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm here to tell you, Clinton, I don't know about them totally, but they have 4 or 5 guys in their lineup who can really slug the ball. And those 4 or 5 guys, I think 3 or 4 of them were on the basketball team, and so I think they have some carryover, just athletic prowess.
And so does Glasgow, right?
Yeah, they do.
A lot of their Jackson Poland, and they have
John
several.
Carter Myers, yep.
That's carryover there as well.
Yeah.
Baseball, and some of them are 3-sport people.
That's right. So, I mean, Clinton's probably better than what people would expect Clinton to be, but I'm sure that was a disappointing loss.
It is. Well, in Glasgow, in baseball, you can, unlike basketball, you play every day, and sometimes it depends on pitching and pitching matchups and this and that, and you're not going to go undefeated. I'm just going to say that.
Right.
Very few. I don't know very many teams that are going to have 4 or 5 starting pitchers that that you can rely on that way. And so you can more easily lose in a baseball game than maybe a basketball, a football for sure.
Yeah. Or
even softball, when you can just pretty much pitch 1 or 2 pitchers.
Right.
Baseball sometimes you just got to out-hit somebody.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to say, I think a game like the one Glasgow had on Sunday is a good game to take some lessons from. About composure is not exactly the right word, but I guess under pressure when the other team starts hitting the ball,
Coach Royce
kind of recover.
Coach Royce is pretty good at process, and he'll it's one bat at a time, one inning at a time, and and sometimes you can hit line shots and hit it right at people.
And they actually did that quite a bit.
And sometimes you can, hit it off the end of the bat, but it flares in the right spot. So you can't always get caught up in sometimes with do you win or lose. It's the process. Are you playing the right way? Are you catching the ball when it's hit to you? Are you throwing strikes, not walking a lot of people? Are you making good contact? And sometimes you can do all those things and still get beat.
Yeah.
And that's in baseball. I think is the right approach. It's are you approaching the game the correct way? And if you win, you good. If you lose, you just move on to the next day, and just like they're doing today.
Yeah, and I will mention this too. I think Glasgow had one they hit off the wall and one they hit to the wall, and the wind was blowing a very awkward way in Clinton County. So that game could have been 10-0, based on those two hits right there.
Well, UK last night in softball, by the way,
yeah,
against Georgia, both teams are ranked in the top 20. UK is up 8-1 in the sixth inning, and 8-1 in the sixth inning, and they have a SEC rule that if you're up 9 or more after 6, it's called.
Yeah.
No, 8 or more. So they're up 7, and they have runners on second and third, no way out, and they don't score. Georgia comes back and beats them.
That's a
in
hard
2
one
innings.
to swallow.
That's exactly right. So, these things happen.
Yeah. Meanwhile, both these teams, Barron and Glasgow, return to action today. Glasgow's going up to E-Town to play. E-Town's usually pretty good.
Traditional power.
So that should be a good bounce-back test for them. We mentioned schedule. Glasgow's schedule is they've got some pretty tough teams on their schedule.
Oh, they always play the LaRue, the Somerset,
yeah,
E-Town, Central Hardin, Grayson, all really good baseball programs. Plus, they tend to play Bowling Green and South Warren as well.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Barron's going over to Cumberland County. Both the softball and baseball team are over there today.
Neat place to play over Cumberland County. That park.
Right, is it right on the river? The one where they play?
It's at it's the park. I don't know how to describe it, but it's kind of it's like a county park system.
Yeah.
But they used to have like pretty nice seats for the baseball.
Oh yeah.
Kind of enclosed seats. Yeah. I don't know what they have now.
Yeah, well, that's pretty neat. I've never actually been there for a baseball game or softball game. So
yep.
I think I've seen the park from the road.
Yeah, it's right down from the school, but it's the park system.
Yeah. All right, I got you. All right, well, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Hey, John, I bet you did not know that you are a prognosticator, a foreseer, so to speak, because last week you made the joke about Sean Miller still being in Arizona, and guess what?
He got fired.
He did get fired. I should not be so gleeful in a coach.
Well, I'm not.
I'm
not happy that he got fired, but he's the first of the group that had serious charges brought about by the FBI, basically, that started all this. LSU still has their coach. Kansas, Bill Self is still there. Louisville got rid of Rick Pitino.
They cleaned house pretty much of everything.
Auburn, got rid of their assistants, but not their head coach. But Sean Miller had kind of survived for a couple years. I think the only thing he got was maybe set out one game or whatever. But evidently that was he had 1 year left on his contract, and that's Arizona's definitely a top 10 job.
Yeah,
definitely top 10 job in the country in terms of tradition, in terms of probably lifestyle, a Pac-10 conference, it's an elite program. So that will attract some big-time people.
Yeah, it'll be curious to see who they fill that position with, because they kind of have to do.
They've turned into a lot of one and done here lately, too, and they hadn't gotten much out of it.
No, they haven't. And that's the other thing. What I was going to say is I feel like Arizona's a bit in a position that Louisville was whenever they got rid of Patino and Urich and that whole group of people that were associated with that.
They could get hit pretty hard.
Yeah, they need to really turn over a new leaf, so to speak. So whoever they bring in.
Well, they voluntarily did not play an NCAA tournament. They announced that in December.
Right.
Now, I don't know if they looked at their team and they didn't think they was going to be good enough, but they basically self-imposed.
Yeah.
And now they got rid of him. So they know some serious charges are coming down the road. Louisville's already faced theirs at first.
Yeah.
could be get another round, but Arizona has not really faced anything yet.
Yeah,
though they've got some major charges.
They are as they used to say, they are dancing on the hot coals at the moment.
We'll
see if they can get to the other side.
But there will still be a big time coach who will go there.
Oh yeah. Meanwhile, the Masters was played over 4 days, and for the first time ever, a person from Japan won it, Hideki Matsuyama. And he was absolutely elated. You could just, I'm not, people I'm sure are really happy when they win the Masters, but that guy was one of the most. Well,
he's a stoic guy. I mean, he was happy. I mean, he was carrying the weight of Japan on him.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was not. I watched I taped it and I watched the Saturday and Sunday. I like watching the big events. Mm-hmm. Not the most exciting Masters it ever was, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, the big names never really challenged. Mm-hmm. Matsuyama is a great player, but not the most electrifying player I've ever watched.
Right.
And I think it could have got real interesting if somebody could have put some pressure on him because he struggled early and then kind of got it together, then kind of struggled late. But but the big wigs never got close enough. They all struggled. Justin Thomas never put any pressure on him. Jordan Spieth never really got close enough.
What was it, like hole 15? I think somebody had the opportunity to get within a stroke of him, and they just couldn't.
His playing partner. That's right. Made a little bit of run, and then he hit it in the water. Mm-hmm. So, that kind of did it for him. So he bogeyed the last hole, but he got through the finish line.
Yeah, he did what he had to do, finish, and congratulations to him. I guess congratulations to all of Japan. I mean, I didn't know. I guess.
I
didn't know. I mean, I guess
first Japanese golfer to win
or not. Yeah,
it is big in Japan, and he's they estimated that could be worth close to $1 billion to him.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, good luck.
Also, we were gonna talk about this real quick. Seems like the thing we talk about every year with the WKU Hilltoppers basketball program is who's coming, who's staying, and who's going.
And it's even more so this year when the transfer portal is just running wild for everybody.
Yeah,
so it's free year basically this year.
Yeah. I mean, so Kenny Cooper stuck around for a drink of water after fighting to be eligible.
Disappointing. It seemed like he got a tough call last year when they wouldn't allow him to play. When everybody in the world got to play and he had to sit out, and then this year. He just never really performed to the level that he was playing at David Lexcomb. In fact, he did not get off the bench the last 3 or 4 games.
Yeah, I mean, he basically got usurped by the freshman.
McKnight. Yeah. And so he transferred to Tennessee State.
Yeah, and then Jordan Rawls, another guard.
That hurt. Jordan Rawls' last game, he had 20 points.
I just don't. Now, his surprise, Kenny Cooper, I was like, oh, that doesn't surprise me because, as you mentioned, he wasn't playing at the end of the year anyway. Jordan Rawls surprises me.
He was a 4-star recruit as well. I'm sure he was upset overall with his lack of playing time. I mean, he came off the bench and probably played 20, 25 minutes a game, probably thought he deserved more.
But, the two guys who were really in front of him, one's definitely gone and the other one's probably gone. Well, that's true. They have an extra year if they want it, Hollingsworth and Anderson. So maybe that's an indication that they may be coming back. I mean, because otherwise I would think Rawls would look and say, I get to play next year.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Rawls show up at a Power 5 conference.
True. Yeah, that's very true. And maybe, they've got a couple of guards coming in that are
Zion Harmon is the most famous.
Yeah, so maybe he doesn't like the way that's shaping up. Who knows?
You don't know anymore.
Yeah. The one thing we do know is Charles Bassey's going to the NBA draft. He won't be back this time.
And Carson Williams going
to play football, apparently.
Yeah, I mean this is truly for college athletes this year. It's like free agency.
It really
is. You go wherever you want to go, and I think what there's over 1,200 men that's in the transfer portal.
Yeah,
we'll see at the end of the year if all 1,200. I don't think all 1,200 are going to find a place.
Not back in Division I, I would say. Some of them may find themselves at an NAIA school or Division II or III or something of that nature because there can't possibly be 1,200. I mean, there could be 1,200 slots to fill, but there can't possibly be 1,200 slots to fill that they would be satisfied with.
And all the big-time programs they're losing players, and then every time they lose one, they're getting somebody else.
Yeah,
it's amazing to kind of watch it, to be honest with you.
It's
I mean, they're not just leaving from. I mean, Florida is one of Florida's starting guards, averages 11 points a game, just transferred to Louisville.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a starting guard at Florida going to Louisville. The starting guard for Miami of Florida in the ACC. Transferring to Louisville. Great shooter, 6'7" guard that can really shoot it.
Yeah.
Now, listen, you're much more open-minded to this transfer portal than me. I really don't think you should be able to transfer within your conference and immediately play. I mean, you can go wherever you want to go, but going wherever you want to go and immediately playing is two different deals.
Yeah, I kind of have some issues with the immediate play. This year I would say there's an exception, and maybe there should be an exception. I don't know. Apparently our legislatures believe there should be exceptions, and the NCAA has said there should be exceptions. So who am I?
Well, then it's question settled. Our legislator is always right, and the NCAA is always right. So there you go. There's no need for us to even
necessarily say that.
There's no need to even question their wisdom.
I didn't necessarily say that, but I will. What I was going to say though is that this year is this whole window of a year is a different thing.
It's the COVID year.
But at the same time, going forward, I'm with you on the I don't know about in conference, but I don't think you should automatically be able to transfer and immediately play. The thing most important though is once you do it once, you definitely don't get to do it again. I do allow.
Will they do that, or is that going to be unfair to these poor athletes who are getting a free education?
Look, here's the thing. I allow for you to make mistakes, decision-making mistakes between 17 and 21. All right?
How many? Can you transfer 3 or 4 times, or going to give them one?
More often than not, in court, you get one shot.
So you're going to give them one transfer.
Yeah, I'll let you transfer once.
Okay. And then after that, you got to sit out a year, right?
I might make you sit out a year that first time. It just depends.
Okay.
But definitely, I say you get to transfer once. You probably get to transfer once and not sit out a year.
Okay. All right.
But there may be the reason I say there may be a sit out a year is because there may be extenuating circumstances on why you decide to transfer, and those need to be weighed. Such as we've talked about before, your coach left, the guy who recruited you. Maybe you get the opportunity to make that decision.
I don't have a problem with when your coach leaves. I think everybody should be able to go.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are my exceptions. But if you're just like, you know what, I don't think I'm going to get enough playing time here, I think I'll go somewhere else, you may not get to play right away. You know, you might need to prove that it's a family decision, you're moving closer to home, you're doing all these things that may have an actual impact on your personal life, which I might give you a break for. But if it's just...
And who's we? Are you going to have a committee to determine all that?
Well, I mean, technically speaking, it's supposed to be the NCAA, but hey.
Come on now.
I'm giving everybody the benefit of the doubt.
Okay.
After this year, I may become a hardliner when all this stuff comes down because I may get tired of seeing it myself. But then again, I'm not necessarily married as a fan to any particular school or team or that kind of stuff. So I don't kind of have an emotional response to this stuff, you know, from a fandom situation. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just a little different.
I think one of the problems is that people who are fandoms, I think, they like to see a little bit of continuity out of their team.
That I understand. I would like to see some continuity out of these teams, but I think that horse has been out of the barn for a long time.
Yep.
And you may need to change the team you root for if you want continuity, because you may not be able to root for Kentucky or Duke or Arizona or any of these schools that are bringing in transfers or doing one-and-dones.
In the other sense, you can get good real quick.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait on a freshman.
Or you can also look real bad real quick, as Kentucky did this year.
That's exactly right.
Real quick, before we get out of here, a couple of things. I wanted to congratulate Bree Russell. She she did her public signing today. She actually committed back in September to play golf at Midway. So congratulations to her. I know I talked to her. I'll have a video up later. It's been, a dream, I think she said, since she was like a little girl to play college golf. And also I want to tell folks about, we have a 104 The Score app now where you can find all of our coverage of local sports and that kind of stuff. You can hear this show on there. You can listen to the live stream of this show on there. And you can find that in the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store, John.
That's great.
All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We will be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.